but I want to take ahead from what Professor Madhulika Banerjee said. And I'm in a bit of a quandary as to what to speak. But let me first sort of take from what Professor Tili had said about the focus of the event today is on linking SDGs, CITES, and climate change. And being in the field of urban planning education for a long time, and Prasad is following me, going to probably expand on that in terms of how practically that's being addressed. And what one has found is, and also want to refer to what Professor Madhulika Banerjee said of problematizing one form of education which is problematizing. But then there's another form of education which is problem solving. And I moved from problem solving discipline, which we are largely calling professional education. And it was to do with how cities were being developed. What one did find is uh, the disciplines which do, especially on the cities where the emphasis on problem solving, the problem solving happens without actually referring to or anchoring into larger development debates or perspectives. Uh, Problem solving happens without locating oneself into political economy of the situation that one is dealing with. And so the problem solving becomes very much top down rather than coming bottom up. Uh, so there's one set of problems that when education with regards to cities and problem solving their problems happen there, is there's a very there's multiple disparate streams. One stream would talk about cities and SDG linkages or even climate change as part of the SDG. Another stream would look at how it was done physically, and third stream looks at how to manage with financing and institutional mechanisms. And often there's very little talking to each other that happens. Unfortunately, there's a whole trend of specialization because more and more people think that you need to specialize to earn more money. And so that's how the education system has been organized, and students also sort of trained to think that way. Um, at, Now I'm in a university which is Ahmedabad University, where we sort of moving in the education which is called liberal education system, and I think Madhulika Banerjee spoke quite a bit about that new system. Uh, Today only Bennett University has announced a new liberal education program, so it seems to be moving in that direction. There's a dilemma here because to offer liberal education system in the public education system that we have today with its all regulatory mechanisms and top-down decision making that happens, it's becoming extremely difficult to bring about a choice-based liberal education system. Uh, we are experimenting with this with sort of emphasis on that more interdisciplinary horizontal education rather than very vertical specialized education. So what one does is to have a system wherein you have half your credits taken in your discipline that one wants to, but another half comes across all other disciplines, which allows for more interdisciplinarity of learning. The question here on interdisciplinarity of learning is, uh, we all know, and for example, climate change, if one takes that, or SDG, I think Arumar showed the pathways to achieving SDG, or you enter the SDG where you enter from one point and you end up at another point because there are interlinkages. The question on for us is, how do we actually get to doing this with the students? If we were also to have more uh, project-oriented approach, more hands-on learning, sending students to the real world to be able to draw these linkages and then start working with them to find these interdisciplinary linkages and towards problem solving. Uh, this is obviously an experiment in the making, and this is what I think we are thinking through about how to go about it. The second issue that is important is when we start building this approach, there needs to be students' engagement at with it's simultaneously in the research process. So they need to be able to problematize a situation and then solve, and then try and within that sort of uh, understand how various disciplines work. And COVID is really indeed a good example for us at the universities to understand the virus, the virology part of it, the epidemiology part of it. If you look at where the virus is spread, it is linking to certain socio-economic political factors. There's a link to migrants and the process of urbanization and so on. So that's a very classic example, rightly pointed out by Aroma Rescue. It's not just linked to SDGs, of course, but it's also linked to the way we could bring in interdisciplinary learning at, at the tertiary level. Uh, and it's the same thing is about actually climate change, because when you have climate change discussions, uh, you do have people working together. And initially it was largely people who were modelers, and especially in the mitigation side there were a very restricted number of people, but now the people who are talking about, and I think 1.5 report did very strongly flag that there is very strong linkage of SDGs and climate change. And that how the question is that how do you, these are all interesting sort of questions at the macro level or a meta level in terms of conceptual dealing. But the question is when we is the struggle at the bottom when you start localizing these issues as to if you were to look at, for example, mitigation in transport sector in the cities, then how do you look at its linkage with the SDGs? Where are those linkages going to occur, and how are we going to measure them for our ability to intervene into the policy dimension? And there needs to be a lot more research there. The key question at the university level for us who are in liberal education is to bring in students in this kind of research projects, to expose them to the real way of how interdisciplinarity actually works on ground, and you could use that understanding for problem solving.